Romania after the revolution, the difficult first 10 years of freedom. In recent years, one may have heard of the troubling events happening in Romania. Similarly to the situation in many other Central and Eastern European countries, Romanian civil society has staged a number of significant protests centered around upholding the rule of law and fighting corruption. The origins of these demands in the country date back to 1989, the year in which Nicolae Ceausescu's dictatorship and, subsequently, the Socialist Republic of Romania collapsed. To understand the difficult situation which Romania faces today, it is fundamental to understand the links that today's society has with the revolution that happened. Ceausescu is overthrown. In mid-December 1989, the first inklings of civil unrest made themselves heard against Romania's communist rule. The spark that lit the revolution was the public protest held by the Hungarian minority of Timisoara, in western Romania, against the attempted eviction of a Hungarian pastor who had criticized the regime in a TV interview. A huge uprising subsequently broke out in the city a day after, on the 17th of December, and the police opened fire, killing approximately 100 people. In an attempt to placate the rising unrests and re-establish control over the country, on the 21st of December Ceausescu addressed a support rally of over 100,000 people, many of whom were workers that had been brought in to attend this assembly under threat of being fired. This decision backfired. 2 minutes into his speech, the crowd started turning against him and eventually developed into a full-fledged riot. Ceausescu was forced to hide and later flee when the entire city began to rise against the regime forces and its infamous political police, the Securitate. Ceausescu and his wife fled the capital on the 22nd of December, but were captured not too long after that. After a show trial on the 25th of December, the dictator and his wife were executed by a firing squad, marking the end of 42 years of communist rule. Although it had developed and culminated in just a few days, the Romanian Revolution witnessed a regular use of disinformation tools by regime forces, with Securitate agents and officials attempting to create a wind of panic within the country and turn fighting groups against each other. Additionally, confusion amongst the military due to contradictory orders in the days following Ceausescu's fleeing vastly contributed to the death toll of the revolution. By the time the violence ended, over 1,000 people had lost their lives. After the revolution, with Ceausescu's flight from Bucharest, political organizations started to rise from the underground. One movement in particular quickly became the main political actor leading the aftermath of the revolution. The FSN, Frontul Salvare Naționale or National Salvation Front, was composed of several high-ranking members of the existent Romanian Communist Party who had been vocal in their opposition to Ceausescu since before the revolution. The FSN was quick to establish an interim government, led by Ion Iliescu as president and Petre Roman as the prime minister. On the 27th of December, with the violence finally placating, Ion Iliescu, a former friend of the Ceausescu couple and an important official within the Romanian Communist Party, announced the abolition of the one-party system and called for free elections, to be held in May. These would be the first free elections Romania would have since 1937. The FSN government. The FSN had originally promised not to stand in the May 1990 presidential and legislative elections. Despite this, in February the organization registered as a political party, and by May they stood as a united front with a number of election candidates picked from the high-ranking officials of the former Socialist Republic. Iliescu, leading candidate for the presidency, insisted that the country had to move forward rather than focus on investigating the crimes of the former leaders. On the other hand, transitional justice was something that was strongly demanded by the other political parties that had emerged from the ashes of the revolution. FSN knew that to win the elections they would have to portray themselves as something the people were familiar with. Iliescu used his charisma to be seen as a man close to the Romanian people. The party had no strong organized opposition running against them at the time and could boast the support of much of the international community. It thus came to no surprise that he was elected president with more than 85% of the votes and that FSN won a majority in both chambers of the Romanian parliament, with Petre Roman remained prime minister, and its government started cautious economic reforms. With almost no opening on the rest of the world before 1990, Romania had, at the time, a severe lack of political culture. The overwhelming support for the FSN would not last. While anti-communist protests had already begun, or better, had never stopped, during the FSN's interim government, the elections caused an uptick in civil unrest. Attacks against the government started at the hands of both the newly formed opposition parties and of the young generation and educated people, who had had a small taste of what freedom was like in most Western European countries and liberal democracies. The violence of the demonstrations escalated in June 1990 during the so-called Mineriad. The Mineriad, discontent against the continuation of the former Romanian Communist Party under another name, on the 22nd of April 1990 opposition parties and students organized a peaceful demonstration and march in Bucharest. The goal was to ensure an investigation in the events which had taken place during the revolution, the political independence of the Romanian television station, and to ban all former members of the Romanian Communist Party from the new government. The demonstration soon became a sit-in that would last for over a month. The numbers of demonstrators dropped after the FSN's May victory, but many remained. The government attempted to negotiate, but on June 11, the sit-in turned violent due to dissatisfaction over the results of these negotiations. Rioters attacked the government's palace, and the police, military forces and army were called in to contain the violence. This uninterrupted protest between April and June 1990, led by university teachers and students, would become known as the Golaniad. In order to clear out the protests, the government also called to Bucharest industrial workers and coal miners from the Jiu Valley, in southwest Transylvania, who were mostly in support of Iliescu's government. On the 14th of June, the miners, led by trade union leader Miron Cosma, charged the protesters alongside government's forces and police. The result was a very violent confrontation and hundreds of wounded people. While the pro-regime media claimed that the miners' attack on the protesters protected the newborn democracy, the international community as well as the newborn independent and opposition press were shocked by this intervention and harshly questioned the legitimacy of the new government. The FSN only claimed that it defended itself against anti-democratic protesters. FSN splits. A chance for the opposition. Even though opposition to FSN and Iliescu's government was at the time growing, the regime attempted to retain power by exerting control over powerful media outlets, trying to influence debates and delegitimize opponents. The local geopolitical context, which included Yugoslavia's collapse and the invasion of Moldova by Russian forces, was used as a tool by the government to present itself as a stability token, ensuring freedom and fairness reigned inside the country. Despite this united front to the population, however, tensions within the echelons of the party started to rise. In April 1992, due to tensions between Prime Minister Petre Roman and Iliescu, the FSN split. Iliescu left with his supporters and founded the Democratic National Salvation Front, rebranded 1 year later as the Social Democratic Party of Romania. Only a few months later, in September, general elections in the country reconfirmed Iliescu as president, and the Democratic National Salvation Front entered into a coalition with left-leaning and ultra-nationalist parties such as the PRM, Greater Romania Party. Petre Roman's FSN only got 10% of the votes in both chambers of parliament, and while he remained as party secretary, the party would be rebranded in 1993 as the Democratic Party. In the midst of the chaos happening within the former FSN, one particular electoral alliance rose to the occasion. The Romanian Democratic Convention, CDR, composed of several center-right political parties, managed to become the main political opposition and second-largest party in Romania between 1992 and 1996. Its impact was positive enough that during the 1996 elections, Emil Constantinescu, leader of the CDR and presidential candidate, managed successfully defeat Ion Iliescu in the second turn of the presidential election. Constantinescu wasn't affiliated in any way to the former communist authorities and was an early opponent to the FSN. His term, although marked by some progress within the institutions and allowed foreign investors to enter in the hope of revitalizing the Romanian economy, was also undermined by the most important governmental crisis of the decade. Like and subscribe for more.